All right, on this episode of Cinema Disaster, we're going to be talking about the 1984 film Ghostbusters. And I feel like I don't think that there's anyone out there that has not seen this film. I mean, I'm sure there's somebody, but I feel like the majority of people have seen this movie. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, people who might be watching this, I'm sure, have seen it.
Yeah. Um, so I don't really feel like there's much we can say about it, really, that they probably don't already know. But let's talk about some shit about it. I don't know. And obviously, it was written by Dan Aykroyd and Harold Ramis, and it was directed and produced by Ivan Reitman. I saw this movie in theaters when I was growing up. This is one of those films that I think is a perfect movie. And it's one of those films that I think is like transcended the generations. You know, every generation has a handful of movies that live on, like The Wizard of Oz has lived on, and certain other films from the past have lived on. They never die. They go from generation to generation. And I feel like this is one of those from the 80s that is everybody still knows about. Everybody still watches it. And I've never met anyone that doesn't like this film. Although I'm sure that there's some people out there, but I've never met anyone. It's a good movie. It's like such a great blend of comedy and horror. It's like perfect mix of that. Like, what do you want to say about it, or what do you think about Ghostbusters?
Yeah, it's really good. I like it a lot. My favorite aspects of it are, like you touched on, it's a comedy, sort of a horror-ish kind of things going on. It's not really scary, though, but I love...
Certain parts as a kid were, to me.
Yeah, oh yeah.
Like,
when I was a kid. I love, though, the dynamic between the cast, between Harold Ramis, Bill Murray, Dan Aykroyd,
Ernie Hudson.
Then
we got Sigourney Weaver.
Annie
Potts.
Yeah, and yeah, she's
Rick
really
Moranis.
good. Rick Moranis, yes. There's so much awesome shit in there. But I love the dynamic between all of them, and then like they play really well off each other, and then I love the effects. I love practical effects.
Oh yeah, we've talked about it in Batman video. We talked about the Dick Tracy episode.
Same thing with this movie. I love that there wasn't even a CGI back then.
And it looks great. Like the whole movie looks great.
It does.
And you went to New York, and you went to the firehouse, but you said you couldn't find the building, what do you call it? The
Zool building, for lack of a better, Spook Central, is what they call it.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's not a real building, that they took a building and then they, through special effects, added all that stuff on the top of it, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And those were, sets.
No, the interesting thing you talked about how great of a dynamic this cast had, but in the original, when Dan Aykroyd's original idea of this film, it was going to be another vehicle for him and John Belushi, and John Belushi obviously he died.
Yeah.
So after Belushi died, the script was rewritten, and Richard Pryor was actually considered to take the role of what Belushi was going to be. And then eventually it went to Bill Murray. And the character of Rick Moranis, who plays Louis Tully, that was originally offered to John Candy. And, and John Candy was on SCTV, you remember back then, and it ended up going... Candy didn't totally understand the role. So he passed on it, and it went to another SCT alumni, which was Rick Moranis. And... as far as the original script, it was very different, because Dan Aykroyd had it take place in the future, and it was going to be like the Ghostbusters could travel through space and time, and there would be not just their group of Ghostbusters, but there would be Ghostbusters all over the place, just like firemen for each town. It would be Ghostbusters for each. And I'm not sure if they were supposed to be in competition with one another or if what was going to happen, but
like maybe it's just precincts, kind of like how I mean, it's funny that you say that, and their base was a firehouse.
It was, yeah.
But yeah, probably like just departments around to take care of.
But I remember, I don't know if it was Harold Ramis or if it was Ivan Reitman. It may have, that suggested to them to instead build a story to where you get to know the characters, have it take place in the modern world, and I think ultimately the way they chose to do it makes it more believable, because they don't just automatically start you off with like 100-foot marshmallow man attacking the city. If they did just throw you into that world, you may be kind of unbelievable to you.
Yeah.
But the way they build it is you get to know the characters as college students and failed scientists and whatnot, and it gets a little bit more extreme as the movie goes on, and finally, by the time you get to the end where they're fighting Gozer and the Marshmallow Man scene, like, you completely accept it, and it doesn't seem ridiculous at all, because they've eased you into that, So
I think I didn't know a lot of what you just said, but I think it turned out exactly how it should have.
Yeah.
I'm glad. I love John Candy, but I'm glad it was Rick Moranis.
Right.
I love Richard Pryor, but I'm glad it was Bill Murray.
I think everything fell into place the way it should.
Yeah.
Like with the music, it was originally offered to Huey Lewis to do the theme song to this film. And it ended up going to Ray Parker Jr., who wrote the Ghostbusters that everybody knows. But to make up for it, they gave the theme song to Huey Lewis on Back to the Future, which came out a year later in '85. And I think that everything worked out fine. Ray Parker Jr. was perfect for doing the theme of this film, and Huey Lewis was perfect when it came to Power of Love and Back in Time and all that he did for Back to the Future. It all fell the way it should,
Because that's like an iconic theme song, the Ghostbusters theme song.
Yes.
And the Back to the Future one.
Yeah. You can't hear either, you can't hear either one and not think of the films, obviously.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, everything worked out. Another thing that the inspiration for this, now, I don't know, I've seen a lot of interviews with Dan Aykroyd, and he's very much into the paranormal. He believes in into ghosts and a lot of aliens,
UFOs. He's done documentaries about UFO sightings and encounters and all that.
So this is very much part of who Dan Aykroyd is in real life, of things that he's interested in, and it's he kind of comes from a family of that, because I don't know if it's true, but what I heard anyway is that his father wrote a book called The History of Ghosts, and then you have his grandfather who used to experiment with radios to try and talk to the dead, and then you had I think it was his great grandfather was a spiritualist. So he comes from if that's true, he comes from a long line of people who believed and were interested in the paranormal or contacting the other side or whatnot, and that definitely inspired him to do this film. Not to mention that he was inspired by, he wanted to kind of bring back the old horror comedy dynamic of Abbott and Costello ghost films.
Yeah.
Abbott and Costello meets the Invisible Man and Frankenstein. Abbott and Costello meet Frankenstein. He wanted to bring that to the modern era.
Yeah.
And he did, I think, successfully.
I think he did. Honestly, I think he did better. But I don't want to say better.
They were all.
They took it and evolved it
for the modern. For the '80s.
Yeah.
Because I love Abbott and Costello.
I do too. Those movies are awesome.
And I love those films. And I think that they were perfect for the 30s and 40s, and then he took that and made it perfect for '84.
And going back to the dynamic, especially between the three, original, like in the movie,
Yeah.
between Ramis, Aykroyd, and Murray, especially between them. There's almost kind of like even some Stoogish kind of vibe there.
Yeah, Three Stooges.
Yeah, yeah. And like I like that. I've always been a fan of that type of comedy where they have to play off each other. And I think they really do that well in this movie, and I think it's a part of it that people often overlook.
And you were talking about how, like, at the beginning when Bill Murray's doing
The card
the
test.
card test, and then you got the guy that was in Christine,
Yeah.
and then Jennifer. I can't remember her
Poor
last
guy.
name. I apologize. I can't remember Jennifer Rubin, or was it Runyon, or
Was she in Back to the Future?
she was not. I don't know, but
She looks really familiar.
I apologize that I can't brain freeze right now. But anyway,
Yeah.
that whole thing, he said Bill Murray's such an asshole in that
No,
scene,
he's
but
such a dick in
but
that
funny,
scene.
like a funny asshole.
Yeah.
He has like this subtle humor, or like subtle, you know, I don't even know how you put, like, deadpan, like, delivery that just I think
Like,
is like perfect.
yeah,
Like,
yeah. Like the scene in when he first goes to the apartment. I forget her character's name.
Dana
Dana. He goes to Dana's apartment. He's investigating.
Dana Barrett. That's it.
Yeah, and her paranormal thing happened in the kitchen. He's looking around. He goes and opens the door, and as he's opening the door, she goes, "That's the bedroom. Nothing ever happened in there." And he shuts the door and says, "What a crime!" Like,
Yeah.
it's like really funny.
The whole scene where Dana Barrett comes home, and the marshmallows you said you noticed this time are Stay Puft brand marshmallows.
Yeah, yeah,
But the eggs, when they started jumping out of the counter, and then you hear like the growl coming from like the refrigerator, and when she opens it and you see like that pyramid and that temple or whatever it is, and then you see Zool. That scene was, as a kid for me, it's kind of freaky. It was kind of scary, that part. And then the scene in her apartment when the hands rip out of her chair when she's on the phone and grab her.
yeah,
Sigourney Weaver, as you know, from Alien, Ridley from Alien.
yeah.
Was it
And
Ridley?
Aliens.
And Alien Resurrection.
Ripley.
Yeah, Ripley. That's right. I was
Ridley
thinking, yes.
was the director.
Right,
of
yeah,
Alien.
Ridley Scott, yeah. So yeah, Sigourney Weaver, she was in a lot of great stuff. My mom always liked that movie Working Girl with her in it, which is like comedy or whatnot with Melanie Griffith. But anyway, yeah, and so I thought Sigourney Weaver was great in her scene. And Annie Potts, let me talk about Annie Potts, because I think she's great. I loved her in Pretty in Pink, the character she played. And, I kind of had a crush on her as a kid. But I think she's like, she has like a subtle humor to her too.
She had a lot of good little moments in this movie that made me laugh too. Just like even one of the scenes, like just her reaction. She didn't even say anything. It was just her facial reaction to something was hilarious. Like she's really good.
I quit better jobs than this. Like she has a lot of good lines. But I know I'm. Like, and this film right here is what made them get the cartoon in 1986, which you're a huge fan of.
Yes.
Yes. If you want to talk about, well, let's talk about this first. That scene at the end where everything gets when Gozer comes out, right?
Yeah.
And it's the girl or whatever, and she ends up saying, well, I guess it's after they think they neutralize her and she disappears. And then you hear that voice and it's like, choose the form of the destructor. And, they're like, okay, nobody think of anything. Clear your heads, And then Ray's like, I couldn't help it. Just popped in there,
Yeah, it's
so,
like the decision has been made.
Yeah, so like, if you were in that position, like, and you were trying to just clear your mind of, like, everything, like, what one intrusive thought do you think would make it into your head, and what would what would be the form of the destructor?
I mean, I don't know. Probably something from a comic book. or something, or like I said when we were talking about it earlier, that it might, if I was in that situation and I had seen this movie, it might still end up being Stay Puffed, because I would think, it's like that scene in Ghostbusters.
Yeah. So everybody watching, we're gonna have like a audience participation here.
Yeah,
Like comment on this video and tell me what would pop into your head if you were in that situation. So what would Gozer's form be if you were the one to think of it?
If you were Ray,
Yeah.
and you fucked up.
Yes. Or, well, if you're yourself. I mean, because it's going to be what they as themselves would
They
think
know
of.
what I mean.
Yeah, okay.
They know what I mean.
So, and all of the what do you want to call it, the marshmallow stuff that falls down on like Walter Peck and all that,
Yeah,
that was all shaving cream.
Yeah.
They just spent like tons of money on shaving cream. And Walter Peck, let's talk about him because he's such a good villain in this.
Yeah,
and
he's such an asshole.
The 80s were so good at casting a villain like of.
Yeah, well, I mean, not just casting but writing them. Like they are antagonists in the truest form. That in a lot of 80s films, the antagonist, like you see it in a lot of them, like Ferris Bueller, Ghostbusters. It goes on and on, but I'm getting off point. They're like so much the antagonist that they don't care what is actually going on around them. They just want to be right, or they want to be the one that wins. Like in this film, it's very clear that
when they're talking to the mayor, right?
Yeah, it's very clear that it's a real thing that's happening to the city, the ghosts, and the Ghostbusters are the only ones that can stop him. And he's still being like, no, these men should be in prison. Stop them, like even though it means the destruction of the city, he still wants to be right. Like, right. That's what a dick he is.
And lots of quotable stuff, like when Venkman says, this man has no dick. Yeah. The actor that plays Vincent, the actor that plays Walter Peck says that still to this day, when people see him on the street, they still say that to him. They still quote that line. He can't get away from it.
Yeah.
There's lots of back off, man, I'm a scientist, and what, that's a big Twinkie. There's like just so many that just like entered like the lexicon of like our language, like our culture. It just,
we came, we saw, we kicked its ass.
Right. It's just like so much. And so let's talk about the cartoon, because that got made because of this success of Ghostbusters. So in '86, you had the real Ghostbusters, and with that, you had all the toys that came along with it.
Mm-hmm. And those toys were awesome. We mentioned them before.
Yeah, I used that slime, the pink slime that they used to have, ectoplasm. I used to have so much of that.
Yeah, well, I believe for a brief time, either when they first came out or somewhere in the middle, almost every toy came with a little tub of the slime. But then I imagine they wanted to cut costs, so that, like, even the action figures, like, it didn't have to be a set. Like, even the action figures came with a little thing of slime.
And what were you saying, that you always had the figures, but your cousin had the big stuff?
Yeah, like, for some reason my parents wouldn't usually buy me the bigger, like the car, like the Ecto-1.
And you wanted Stay Puft.
And I wanted Stay Puft. But my cousin always got that stuff, but he got like less action figures. I just would always, for Christmas and my birthday, I would just get a shit ton of action figures. So I guess that was probably, looking back, like a planned thing between my mom and my aunt. Like, hey, that way when they're together, they can like play.
And the cartoon was awesome.
Oh,
it really
was.
Was. And you said you wanted to talk about the voices of the Bill Murray. That's like, what do you want to say? Ironic.
It is a little ironic. It's weird that, and I don't remember. You know.
Lorenzo Music.
Okay, so he did the voice of Peter Venkman on the cartoon, the real Ghostbusters. Bill Murray plays Peter Venkman in the two Ghostbusters movies.
Yes.
that dude Lorenzo
Music did the voice of Garfield, the
Garfield,
cartoon,
and which eventually Bill Murray did the voice of
the
Garfield
live
in
action,
the live action movie.
yeah,
That's weird.
with Jason Lee. Was that who was in
Yeah,
that? Was
yeah.
David Seville?
Well, that's
No, that's
Alvin.
Alvin and the
That's Alvin
Chipmunks.
and
You're
the
right. You're
Chipmunks.
right.
But that's weird. That's just such a weird. Like these guys just
I guess they have similar voices.
they do they do like I always thought that Peter in the cartoon sounded they all kind of do, but you know he's got that same kind of like cool delivery.
And it's a cool cartoon because they introduce you to so many different ghosts and phantasms and things like that, and like you can get like Todd has, you can get the whole series in the Ghostbusters Firehouse set.
Yeah, I need to order one.
And it's like every episode of the real Ghostbusters. Then in 1989 we have this right here. We had Ghostbusters 2, which I liked. It definitely not as watertight of a script or as of a story, but I still enjoyed it. And again, Sigourney Weaver came back, Annie Potts, Dan Aykroyd, Ernie Hudson,
All of them.
all of them, yeah, all of them. Except for, if you notice that in this film, the way Annie Potts looks is sort of modeled more after how she looked in the real Ghostbusters cartoon. And,
In the first one or the second?
The
one?
second movie.
In the second movie.
And then, obviously, since Slimer was kind of their pet in the cartoon, then he kind of makes an appearance
In the sequel.
in the sequel too, And in this, you had the river of slime, the mood slime.
Yeah, it amplified your mood.
Yeah, and Bobby Brown took the theme song,
Mm-hmm.
for this film. Chloe Webb is in this too at the beginning, who played Nancy in Sid and Nancy. She's the one that claims that she knows the world's going to end on Valentine's Day and met the alien at the hotel. Could have been a hotel. Could have been a spaceship made up to look like a hotel. You know that whole scene.
Yeah, you're talking about the second one.
Yeah, the second one. Yeah. And then in 1997, there was another cartoon which was Extreme Ghostbusters. And then in 2016, we had Ghostbusters. The reboot or the remake, Paul Feig directed, and then we had Saturday Night Live alumni. We had Kristen Wiig and Kate McKinnon and Brain Freeze. I own it. A lot of people hated on that film, but I actually think that all of the people that were in that movie are actually funny, and I think the guy that played Thor in this movie, which was Chris Hemsworth, was hilarious in this movie. And then you have Bill Murray makes a cameo, and I'm not sure, but
I will say about that one, the 2016 one, it's not the big pile of shit that people like to make it out to be.
No, it's definitely not.
But it's not any better than, like, it's not a standout to me. I watched it, I didn't hate it, but I'm also not going to be shouting about it from the rooftops. It's definitely not as good as the 84.
I thought a lot of the backlash about it was stupid. A lot of people was upset that all the women are Ghostbusters. Well, Ghostbusters, women shouldn't be Ghostbusters. Why not? Why shouldn't they be? You know what I mean? It's just dumb arguments. And then they're mad at Leslie Jones, and there was this backlash like about her character, and it was just like, come on, man! Like these things like are dumb arguments. Like watch the film and make a decision for yourself on whether you like it. Don't have these preconceived ideas like women shouldn't be Ghostbusters or blah blah blah. Like just like I said, I grew up on the original Ghostbusters and the cartoons, and I have no problem with the new one. And once again, I thought that all of the actresses in the movie were very funny. I mean, I'm a fan of Kristen Wiig anyway. She was an Anchorman too, which she was hilarious in. And, they were all funny. And anyway, then we had another proposed cartoon, I guess. It was going to be called Ghostbusters, what is it, Brute Force or something like that?
Yeah, I've never heard of that.
I don't know. But it got... I don't know if it got canceled, but it definitely got. It's in a state of suspended animation because now they
Boom.
yes they want to kind of they wanted to concentrate on Ghostbusters 3 that's coming in 2020. And you said you're pissed that they decided to do this after Harold Ramis died.
I am, because like everybody wanted Ghostbusters 3 for like
Yeah,
what, this came out in what year?
89.
89. So we're looking at however many fucking decades people.
Right now it's been 30 years.
So 30 years.
So if this
well,
does,
before that,
Yeah.
you know, because he died a few years ago. But we've been wanting it, and from what I remember, the like we kept getting this reasoning why they can't do it, like it's just not going to work, and nobody's signing on. Nobody's like, Dan Aykroyd's the only one who wants to do it. No, nobody wants to. Nobody wants to. Oh, you got like two of them on board, but the other one's not. And then Harold Ramis dies, and he died what year?
I don't know. It's
15?
been several years, but I don't remember exactly. Time flies for me, not you know.
Yeah, but it hasn't been a whole lot of years, you know. And I just find it infuriated me that he died, and then all of a sudden they're like, "Oh yeah, we'll do Ghostbusters 3." Like, did they just hate him? I can't
I don't
imagine
know.
why.
We'll see how that plays out.
Yeah,
And what
I
did you
don't
say? You thought? Well, they're gonna.
Are they gonna encounter Egon's ghost?
Yeah, I don't know how they're gonna work that. Or do you think they're gonna do with Star Wars, or they do like get a different actor and then like CG like the face?
No, don't do that. Like, if they're gonna CG him in, then they should do the ghost thing. Like,
Yeah.
Like Egon's dead, and they see his ghost.
But
even that would be super cheap.
You said the closest thing we got to a sequel was the game. You should talk about the game.
Yeah, the game that came out in 2009, the video game, and it was a lot of people. It was a big deal when it came out. I haven't played it yet. Actually,
yeah, I played it. I liked it. It was a good game.
Apparently, they're gonna remaster it here soon, so I'll give it a shot then. But what made it a big deal is that not only was it apparently a really well done game, but it was the entire cast for the voices of the characters. Yeah. So you had Bill Murray, Ernie Hudson, Harold Ramis, and Dan Aykroyd. And at that time, it was like, this is basically Ghostbusters 3, but it's a game.
Yeah.
So.
And that game looked great.
It did.
It looked really good.
Yeah. Like, it had their likeness, you know, in the game.
Another thing, dude, we want to talk about is, you know, just like we talked about the treatment that a lot of the 80s movies got. We talked about with Batman, Dick Tracy, Ninja Turtles. You know, you had with this, you had the movies, you had the cartoons, the toys, and then you had the video games, comic books. There's actually a pinball machine, and there's novels, and there was I remember a really, really bad Ghostbusters game for Nintendo NES. Do you remember that?
Yeah, it was. I mean, to be fair, it was also on Commodore 64.
Yeah.
But most people remember the NES version, and I'm not gonna talk a lot about it.
Yeah.
It sucked.
But it did suck.
Yeah, it did suck. Angry Video Game Nerd has a whole thing.
Oh, yeah.
About the Ghostbusters games.
Yeah, check that episode out that he did on that.
You really
that's
should.
Good.
Ghostbusters. That was the shitty, like, they try to put real voices in. So when you put the game in and you turn it on, that's what you hear.
It's just like mumble mouth stuff.
Yeah, this weird shitty voice go Ghostbusters. But yeah, it was not very good, and it was just strange. And
I do believe, wasn't there a Ghostbusters 2 video game as well?
Yeah.
I don't think I ever played that one, but I remember seeing it.
That one was different than the first one. It was a little better. It was more of like a side-scroller, like you're running around shooting stuff, but it was still weird.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't great, but it was better than the first one.
Yeah. Do you own any of the comics? You're a big comic fan.
I don't think I have any of the Ghostbusters comics, and that's a shame. There was a resurgence in their comics around 2009. And at that time, I was going to the comic shop every weekend because I got paid every week. So every Friday after work, I'd go to the comic shop. And yeah, there was a lot of Ghostbusters comics there. I never bought any though. I was too into the Batman, whatever was going on with Batman at that time, and they were doing reissues of old Ninja Turtles comics. So
Oh
I was
yeah.
buying those, even though I didn't, yeah, it's a whole nother story. I didn't need to buy them, but I bought them.
This thing behind me here, I picked that up at, what was it, Heroic Adventures. That's the comic shop in Glen Carbon, right? That's
Yeah,
the one
Edwardsville, yeah.
Edwardsville,
And
where?
that's the one I'm talking about.
Yeah, I picked that. That's actually a bank. And if you notice, the bank here, it's empty. That's some poor. Tells you how poor that I am.
Yeah.
I probably
Should-
spent too much money on this, but it is a well-made product. It's like hard plastic, and
It is nice.
you know,
Plus, it's cool. It's Ghostbusters.
it does. It doesn't glow in the dark. I used to have a T-shirt that glowed in the dark. The Ghost did. I don't know. I think I gave that away or something. But you know, there's tons of Ghostbuster stuff you can still buy online. I always wanted one of the traps. I never got the trap, from the TV show. You could buy the
Yeah.
I knew
The
someone with
proton
one.
pack and the trap.
I made one of my own as a kid. I just made a fake one, and then to make it smoke, I'd put stink bombs in them, and then they'd smoke or whatever.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
But yeah, I don't know. Everybody's seen this. So that's really all I have to say about it, because everything else you probably already know. So I don't know if you got any final words for the audience, other than remember to comment on below and let us know what would have popped in your head. What would have
What
been.
would have been the form of the destructor?
Yeah.
Yeah. Other than that, busted makes me feel good.
You had to throw that in. But Ghostbusters. So check out this movie. I mean, you already have, I'm sure, but watch it again, revisit it, and then here's Ghostbusters 2. Check out the cartoons and all that stuff. And until next time, keep watching.